This video documents research into Confucius 551 to 479 BC, the Chinese philosopher whose teachings shape how Chinese billionaires think about wealth, work, discipline, and long-term success, revealing why modern Chinese business leaders from Jack Ma to Alibaba executives citing Confucian principles in their wealth-building strategies, creating 2,500-year-old wisdom that remains more relevant than Western short-term thinking. Where in 551 BC, a Chinese philosopher was born who would influence more wealth creation than any economist who ever lived. His name was Confucius. He never wrote about money. He never built a business. He died poor. But 2,500 years later, Chinese billionaires quote him more than Warren Buffett. Jack Ma credits him. Alibaba's values come from him. And if you study what he actually taught, not the fortune cookie version, but the real philosophy, you'll understand why. Chinese entrepreneurs think about wealth completely differently than the West, and why that difference is making them richer. Opening with the realization that Confucius being most influential Chinese philosopher in history with teachings shaping Chinese culture, government, education, and business for 2,500 years, creating philosophical foundation that produced world's fastest wealth creation in past 40 years, teaching that understanding. Confucian philosophy being essential to understanding Chinese business success, where philosophical principles translating directly into wealth-building strategies that Westerners typically misunderstanding or dismissing. Before watching, have you ever read actual Confucius teachings? Or just fortune cookie quotes? Comment, read the real stuff or just fortune cookies. Promising complete transparency, revealing Confucius' 5 core wealth-relevant teachings through analysis of the Analects' primary text. HOW these teachings show up in Chinese billionaire behavior through documented examples from Jack Ma, Pony Ma, and other Chinese entrepreneurs. WHY Confucian philosophy creating different wealth psychology than Western individualism, teaching long-term versus short-term thinking, creating generational wealth advantages. And WHAT Westerners can learn from Confucian principles, applicable to any culture's wealth building, providing actionable cross-cultural wisdom. Establishing Confucius life context, where born 551 BC during China's warring stage period of chaos and violence, become a scholar and teacher traveling China seeking ruler who would implement his ideas of virtuous governance. Dying for 79 BC, largely unsuccessful politically but leaving 3,000 students in a collection of sayings compiled into the Analects, teaching that Confucius not being religious, prophet or mystical sage but rather practical philosopher focused on how human beings should live together in society, family, and governance, creating ethical framework that became Chinese civilization's foundation. Confucius died thinking he failed. He had no idea his teachings would shape 2,500 years of Chinese culture and create trillions in wealth. Comment if this is mind-blowing. Revealing teaching number 1, cultivate Ren, humaneness, benevolence, where Confucius teaching that wealth existing within relationships, not isolation, where Western individualism saying I became rich through my own effort, while Confucian thinking saying I became rich through cultivating beneficial relationships that created mutual value. Teaching that Chinese business culture emphasizing Guanxi, relationships, connections, coming directly from Confucian Ren, where business being web of human relationships, not transactions between strangers, demonstrating how Jack Ma built Alibaba. Not through disruption but through relationship cultivation, where early investors being friends, early employees being trusted relationships, and Alibaba success depending on cultivating trust within Chinese business ecosystem, teaching that Ren meaning treating business partners, employees, customers as humans in long-term relationships, not extractable resources, creating trust-based wealth multiplication. Providing Western application where wealth accelerating through relationship cultivation, not transaction optimization. Teaching that networking, mentorship, strategic partnerships, and reputation all being Ren in practice, where treating people well today creating wealth opportunities 5 years from now. Confucius taught wealth comes from relationships, not transactions. Chinese billionaires built empires on this. Do you prioritize relationships or deals? Comment revealing teaching number 2, practice Li, ritual propriety, discipline, where Confucius teaching that success requiring daily disciplined practice of correct behavior, where Li meaning rituals, routines, proper conduct, and self-discipline in all areas, teaching that wealth's not coming from big lucky breaks but rather from disciplined daily practice of wealth-building behaviors compounded over decades, demonstrating how Chinese entrepreneurs displaying extreme work discipline, where Jack Ma famous for 12-hour days 6 days per week for 20 years, Pony Ma Tencent founder personally testing every WeChat feature, and Chinese startup culture embracing 996 work culture 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days per week, coming from Confucian Li, teaching that disciplined practice being path to mastery and mastery being path to wealth. explaining that Li also meaning propriety, correct conduct, where Confucian ethics requiring doing business correctly, not cutting corners, teaching that Chinese business leaders emphasizing long-term reputation over short-term profit, where losing face mianzi manza through unethical behavior being worse than losing money, creating reputation-based wealth preservation. Providing Western application where discipline and routine being underrated wealth factors, teaching that daily investment, daily learning, daily relationship cultivation, daily skill practice all being Li in action, where Confucian 20-year thinking beating Western quarterly thinking. Confucian teaching, discipline over decades beats talent over years. Chinese billionaires work 12 hours days for 20 years. Could you do this? Comment yes or no. Revealing teaching number 3. Honor Zhao Sao. Filial piety, family loyalty, where Confucius teaching that individual existing within family, creating obligations to ancestors and descendants, where Western individualism celebrating self-made success, while Confucian thinking celebrating family-made success, teaching that wealth being family projects spanning generations, not individual achievement, demonstrating how Chinese business structure emphasizing family involvement, where 87% of Chinese private companies being family-run versus 34% in Western succession planning toward children, not professional CEOs, and wealth preservation for descendants, not lifestyle consumption, creating generational compounding that Western quarterly focused thinking lacking, explaining that Zhao creating long-term thinking automatically where decisions made with how will this affect my children and grandchildren, not how will this affect my quarterly earnings, teaching that Chinese billionaires thinking in 5 or 100-year timeframes, building family dynasties, not personal fortunes, creating patience for compounding that Americans lack, providing Western application where thinking generationally, changing wealth decisions, teaching that real estate over stocks, generational asset, education, investment in children, human capital compounds, and avoiding lifestyle inflation preserves capital for descendants, all being Zhao influenced wealth building. Confucius taught, build wealth for your descendants, not yourself. Chinese think 100 years ahead. Western investors think quarterly. Who wins? Comment, revealing teaching number 4. Pursue righteousness, doing what's right, where Confucius teaching that wealth pursued through righteous means being sustainable, while wealth from unethical means being temporary, where famous Confucian saying, the gentleman understands righteousness, the small man understands profit, teaching that focusing on doing right thing leading to profit, while focusing only on profit leading to shortcuts that destroy wealth. Demonstrating how Chinese business leaders publicly emphasizing social contribution, not just profit maximization, where Alibaba's stated mission being make it easy to do business anywhere, focusing on value creation, not wealth extraction. Jack Ma frequently saying customers first, employees second, shareholders third, representing Confucian Yi where righteous conduct towards stakeholders, creating sustainable business ecosystem, explaining that Ye not meaning anti-profit but rather profit through value, where Confucian teaching being that's creating genuine value for others, naturally producing wealth while extracting value through deception, producing temporary gain followed by reputational destruction, teaching that Chinese business culture shaming those who get rich through exploitation more than Western culture does, providing Western application where focusing on genuine value creation over marketing hype, treating employees well over quarterly cost cutting, and building reputation over decades beating quarterly manipulation, teaching that Ye meaning wealth coming as side effect of doing valuable work correctly, not as primary goal itself. Confucian principle, get rich through creating value, not extracting it. Is your wealth strategy value creation or value extraction? Comment honestly. Revealing teaching number 5. Commit to Zeus your lifelong learning, where Confucius himself, being a lifelong learner and teacher, emphasizing that wisdom and capability developed through continuous study, where famous saying, I am not one who was born with knowledge. I love antiquity and earnestly seek its teaching, that wealth advantage coming from superior knowledge continuously updated, nor one. Education, demonstrating how Chinese billionaires displaying extreme learning commitment, where Jack Ma learning English by giving tourists free tours, Lei Jun Xiaomi founder reading 200+ books annually, and Chinese entrepreneurs studying both Western business and Chinese classics, creating cross-cultural knowledge advantage, explaining that Confucian learning culture creating Chinese emphasis on education, where Chinese families spending 2 to 3x more on children's education than Western families as percentage of income. Chinese students studying 60 hours weekly versus American 30 hours, and Chinese entrepreneurs treating business as learning laboratory, not just profit center, teaching that knowledge advantages compounding over decades, creating wealth moats, providing Western application where committing to reading 50 books annually, spending 5 hours weekly learning high-value skills, and treating every business experience as learning opportunity, all being Zoo, creating knowledge-based wealth advantages that competitors cannot easily copy. Comment, prompt, Confucius taught, Continuous learning equals continuous wealth growth. Chinese entrepreneurs read 200 books a year. How many did you read last year? Comment on this number. Synthesizing how 5 teachings work together where Ren relationships, lead discipline plus Sao generational thinking, Yi righteousness plus Su learning, creating comprehensive wealth philosophy that explains Chinese business success, teaching that it's not 5 separate ideas but integrate a system where relationships require discipline. Discipline serves family. Family wealth requires righteousness. And righteousness requires continuous learning, creating self-reinforcing wealth-building culture. Providing specific Chinese billionaire examples where Jack Ma, Alibaba founder, explicitly crediting Confucian philosophy in speeches and books, stating that Alibaba's culture based on Confucian values. Pony Ma Tencent founder designing WeChat around relationship cultivation, Ren not transaction facilitation. And Lei Jun Xiaomi founder practicing daily learning, Zhu and long-term thinking, Zhao choosing slow, steady growth over fast, aggressive expansion, contrasting with Western wealth philosophy where individualism replacing Ren teaching self-made success, short-term thinking replacing Zhao teaching quarterly results, transaction focus replacing Yi teaching profit maximization, and formal education replacing Zhu teaching one-time degree suffices, creating philosophical differences that produce different wealth outcomes over multi-decade timeframes. Chinese philosophy, relationships, discipline, family, righteousness, learning. Western philosophy, individual, short-term transactions, which builds more wealth. Comment. Acknowledging criticisms and limitations where criticism number 1. Confucian culture also producing negatives, including excessive work hours, 996 culture, being brutal, family pressure being oppressive, and face-saving culture enabling corruption, teaching that every philosophy having downsides. Criticism number 2. Chinese success possibly being despite Confucianism, not because of it, where may be economic liberalization, manufacturing advantages, and population scale explaining growth, not philosophy. And criticism number 3. Survivor bias, where we notice successful Chinese billionaires citing Confucius, but ignore thousands of Confucian practitioners who remained poor. Teaching that philosophy not guaranteeing wealth, addressing Western application where Americans cannot simply copy Chinese culture but can adopt specific principles, teaching that Confucian ideas being universally applicable where relationship, cultivation working in any culture, disciplined daily practice creating success everywhere, generational thinking beating short-term thinking universally, value creation trumping value extraction in all markets, and continuous learning producing knowledge advantages regardless of culture, providing 4-level implementation where level 1 read primary sources spending 10 hours reading the Analects, discovering actual Confucian teachings, not Western interpretations, creating philosophical foundation. Level 2, adopt 1. Principle, choosing single, teaching relationships or discipline or generational thinking or righteousness or learning, and implementing deeply for 90 days before adding second, creating sustainable integration, not surface adoption. Level 3, study Chinese business culture, reading books on Chinese entrepreneurship, Guangxi, and business philosophy, understanding how Confucian principles show up in actual Chinese business practice, creating cultural knowledge advantage. Level 4. Integrate cross-cultural wisdom, combining Western innovation efficiency with Confucian long-term relationship thinking, creating hybrid approach that transcends both cultures' limitations, teaching that best approach being synthesis, not choosing sides, concluding that Confucius died for 79 BC, thinking he failed politically, never imagining his teachings would shape 2,500 years of Chinese culture and contribute to creating trillions in wealth, teaching that ideas mattering more than immediate success, where a philosophical foundation supporting civilization-level wealth creation, recognizing that Chinese entrepreneurs' 40-year wealth creation from 1980 to 2020, partially attributable to Confucian cultural foundation, providing relationship-based, disciplined, long-term value-focused, learning-oriented business culture that complemented market reforms, creating fastest wealth creation in human history. Strongly recommending every viewer read the Analects firsthand, taking 10 hours to encounter actual Confucian thought, discovering how different real philosophy is from fortune cookie versions. Choose one Confucian principle to implement deeply for 90 days, whether relationships, discipline, generational thinking, value, focus, or learning, experiencing how ancient wisdom creates modern wealth, and recognize that philosophy mattering more than tactics. We're getting wealthy tactics changing every decade, but philosophical foundations for wealth being timeless across cultures. Thanking viewers for exploring cross-cultural wealth wisdom and closing with Confucius never talked about money. He talked about being a good person, cultivating relationships, practicing discipline, honoring family, and learning continuously. And by doing those things, Chinese entrepreneurs built trillions in wealth. Maybe he understood money better than any economist, he just called it something else. He called it living correctly. And it turns out, living correctly is the most profitable strategy of all.